Once though, then you can, as long as nothing changes, you just say yes.
Yeah, once you go,
Yeah.
unless you do something drastic, you don't have to change it.
Okay, we're now back in formal work session, continuing with January 20th, 2015. Let's see. My guess is we probably have the Board of Education here, since I see everybody there. You can please join us if you don't mind. If you need to pull up some extra chairs, feel free. Sorry we didn't do it ahead of time. We weren't sure how many were coming. But,
Somebody will come up and sit.
yeah, don't leave John here by himself. How was everyone?
Fantastic.
Good.
Beautiful day out.
Yeah, that's what I understand. I looked out the window there, yeah. We've been here since 10. So,
My sympathies is getting nicer and nicer out there. About 45, 48 degrees. Just right. I'll try to talk really fast.
Take it down.
My understanding was that you're interested in a presentation on the Facilities Commission or Facilities Task Force report that we received back in July, and we've been going through public meetings on.
Yeah, we're glad you, sorry to put you off from December, but December was really, got company. I think from now on, every 4-year cycle, they need to pay very close attention to what's happening in December, because,
It's a busy time.
yeah.
Well, I got copies of the report, the presentation I made here, so if you want to have something to write notes on, or
This is great, great.
so I'll briskly go through this for you, if you wish. I'll wait a second here until everyone's got a copy.
Is this the same, John, is this the same presentation you made to
Yep.
the public?
Yep, this is exactly the same presentation. I've made it, probably 15, 18 times.
Okay.
So for school advertised major meetings, and then city councils, Lions, not Lions, but Rotary, other groups, church groups, stuff. I'm not going to read everything to you, so.
Are we situated? I think we are, right? Everybody good? John, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, we
Thank you.
we have basically 3 strategic priorities: high student achievement, safe learning environment, effective and efficient operations. We want our kids to be safe, and professional, and responsible, productive citizens in our society. The task force job was to carefully study all the issues surrounding our facilities, comply with COMAR, and also deliver a final report. They studied the facilities for about a year. I think they had 8 or 9 formal official meetings. They had some subcommittees and other people doing tasks and development work behind the scenes for them. We looked at the areas of concern, some aging facilities. We have some changing educational operations. I mean, things are changing. We built most of the buildings when we had junior highs. Now we're working with middle schools. Pre-kindergarten is a growth area for us. We looked at what is the funding situation, what are our budgets, what are our budget reductions, and what are the costs of construction. And finally, technology is a really big issue for students and workers today, and we have to deal with that. They reviewed the facilities master plan that we previously had on board. We assessed the current facilities. They identified the issues and requirements, and then they agreed on the recommendations that you see before you. We had a large group, I believe 32 people that served on this, folks from the community, folks from the professions of construction, and folks from schools. So an interesting group of people that were really focused on looking at these facilities. Overall, they said continue the process of using task forces, align class sizes to state capacities, assign schools, students on the basis of residence. We've got a lot of kids that are in special permissions for one reason or another, and the interest was to make sure we serve the kids in the resident situation first. Special permissions are nice, and we're always happy to do that kind of thing. But if it crowds out a kid that lives in the neighborhood right across the street from the school, that's probably not the best thing to do. We looked at the planning guidelines. We looked at alternative financing. We looked at reducing the overall building portfolio. It is really expensive to operate a school. I mean, we've got, schools, you've got an overhead, you've got a principal, vice principal, you've got a head cook, you've got a media specialist, you've got a nurse, you've got a variety of people that you have to have, whether the school is 300 students or 650 students. So we're looking at reducing the portfolio of buildings so we can save those overhead dollars and put those into the classroom.
John, can I ask a question
Please,
while this is
please,
going on?
go right
No,
ahead.
not ask a question. You know, I had a mother in the store the other day, and we were talking about West Salisbury, and that was her statement. She says it's not the fact that whether they need a new school or not. And said, I don't want my child going to a 600 child elementary school. I don't think the education is good in a 600 class school as there is a 300 class school. But what's your comments about that?
It has been studied the Gates Foundation has spent hundreds of millions of dollars studying it for high schools and for elementary schools. At the end of the day, there is no difference between a 300 student school and a 650 student elementary school. At the high school level, between 300 or 400 or 500 student school and say a 1,500 or 2,000 student school. And they came out early on saying small schools are better and all this other stuff. But there are some huge trade-offs that you give up. And when we look at it, we see our principals, and most of our elementary schools are 500-600 student schools. They get the same quality, the same test scores, the same relationship with the principal. Once you get over like 800,000-900,000 kids in elementary school, it starts to get a little bit big. And while we actually, that throws that out the window, is Del Mar gets excellent test scores. But yet, at that school, that's our biggest school, it's almost 900 kids. So I would say to that parent, you really need to look at the services that are provided. And when you have, say, 5 or 6 or 650 kids, you've got a situation where you can have that full-time music specialist. You can have that full-time nurse that's busy. You can maybe even have somebody to back her up or him up if there are other health issues in the school. So we see that as a manageable situation. About the only challenge is that the typical principal can't remember more than about 400 names. So they're going to start missing kids' names when they come in the building.
I wish I could remember 400 names.
So, but that's really, I mean, the way we have to look at it is that we have to be as efficient as possible. And I respect and appreciate, that nice, real small, most of the kids walk to school situation, but that's not what we have to deal with. And, you look at your stores and stuff today, the smaller mom and pop stores have a tougher time because they're still spreading the same administrative overhead across a smaller square footage. So I would say educationally, you're going to get a better education in 600, especially when we pour those dollars in the classroom.
I've also had a mother mention that same
Great.
concern to me.
Sure.
And I know we've talked about that, and you said that, there's economies of scale, that you save money doing that. She brought up, well, what about transportation? Does it cost more? What are the transportation dollars when you consolidate, 300 schools to a 600 school?
You have a tendency initially to run a higher cost in terms of transportation, but it's a small cost. I mean, you're talking about $20,000, $30,000 as opposed to $600,000. The other trade-off on it is we're looking at moving from a pre-K to 2 or 3 school and a 3, 4, or 5 grade school. We're looking at trying to make more of our schools pre-K through 5, which means you've got actually 2 more years or 3 more years of that kid walking to that school. And not only does that save us a bunch of money on the transportation side if we do both moves at the same time, but it also means the parents build a relationship with that school staff and they can commit to it. When a parent is only with a school for a couple of years, it's harder to get them to say, I'm going to really put my time in on the PTA or the ILT. ILT is Instructional Leadership Team, the Family Leadership Council, whatever the activity that goes on. So we see a better linkage with the community if you can have not the larger school, but have that pre-K through 5.
I thought that the concerns in Pittsville were that there would be more transportation issues developed through this plan, where you were sending children from Salisbury to Pittsville, and it was going to create more of a pressure on the transportation aspect.
I listened to a number of people on the Pittsville thing, and I was at the meeting that night, needless to say. And I don't think that the issues are so much transportation as a variety of other factors. I think there was an assumption that was floating around that we were going to ramp that up to, say, 1,000 student school or an 800 student school. And there was concern for the sewer and water and where the kids were going to come from. We just went through a major rebuilding process on that building. I have no interest educationally for expanding it beyond about the size it is right now. Now, 20 years from now, some different group of people will all be sitting in all these chairs. They may say, let's ramp it up to a larger population, but that's not the issue. And in fact, when we've done some preliminary work on the attendance areas, that's what we've got a team that's working on right now, they're really moving the attendance boundary about 1.5 miles, maybe almost 2 miles. I'm trying to remember if, Kathy, if you remember where that line was.
Philip Morris Drive is what we were looking at.
Okay, so if you know where Philip Morris Drive is, that's about where the western line, so the boundary did not move very far to capture about 130 kids.
134 more students.
Yeah,
Okay, 'cause
Go ahead.
I was just to wrap, just to finish up, is that a lot of the task force, I mean, as far as the aspect of, upgrading the buildings or replacing the buildings and all that, that's understood. I mean, someone has to think long-term as far as what we're gonna do. What I thought might be unspoken here was the discussion on the boundaries and the fact of what does happen socially with the kids, and if there are fragmented communities, when you are trying to balance your numbers of students. If you say, well, this school is underserved and we need to transfer so many here and there. I think then that's what I took away from Pittsfield, was that a lot of the parents were concerned that at all costs, to level out your numbers, these students were gonna come from anywhere and everywhere just so that you could get your capacity at that school. And this is what I walked away from. And there really isn't anything in here that reflects what happens to the human element or if it fragments communities because of that.
yeah, that was not our interest. I couldn't justify it economically. I mean, I want to have the kid transported the shortest distance possible.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be foolishness, but we actually ran some numbers. I mean, it takes a while behind the scenes to, where this kid goes, where that kid goes and that. But actually, number one, to get the 134 kids, it changes the racial makeup of the school by 1 or 2%. It changes the free and reduced meals population, the school-dependent kids, about 1 or 2%. So it doesn't change really if you were to look out at the group of kids, it doesn't change how they look or what their economics in their back pocket are. So.
And John, if I might, I just would add at that meeting where 2 points that I went away with, and I spoke to both of those. One was the balanced enrollment piece that we talked about, not the intention of bringing children from all over the county, but we have a school that's underutilized, just been renovated to a beautiful facility. And I don't know how the board can justify empty seats when we can change some boundary lines close to the school and bring other students in. That was one issue. The second issue was the concern of the folks in Willards about portable classrooms.
Right.
And we heard that loud and clear, and I don't believe there is any strong feeling on the board that we should do that. This task force report is just that, it's a report. It's not anything etched in stone. And I don't believe there's support to do anything at Willards until we can do bricks and mortar, certainly not go with a portable classroom approach.
Right.
So we've already discussed and looked at those options, but those were the two key pieces at the Pittsfield meeting, and I do believe we're less than responsible if we leave Pittsfield with a lot of empty seats when we've got crowded issues in other places where we could make some boundary changes and
Well,
bring some
they
students
clearly
in.
don't want you using Salisbury children to fill those seats. I mean, we had that loud.
You gave them a vote that night, remember? You asked them to vote, and they voted.
No,
You said tonight's the
no.
night for you to vote, and they
No,
voted.
Joe, what I said was this was their vote when
Yeah.
they were voicing
Right.
their opinions and their feelings,
Yeah.
and we listened to all of those
Uh-huh.
things, and that is what helps us decide, just as I hope you on this council
Mm-hmm.
listen to what people in this community say, and it impacts how you see decisions.
So
We
their
do the
vote
same
didn't, their
thing.
vote didn't mean that it won't happen. In other words, it just helps you make your decision whether it'll happen or not.
It helps us make a decision as to what direction we need to go, and one of the directions was not to put portables at Willards at this point in time. We don't want a portable city, we want bricks and mortar. Not that Willards at some point might not have grades 4 and 5, but until we can do it with bricks and mortar, we don't see that as something we want to pursue.
Yeah.
We being discussion at the Board of Ed level.
Thanks, John.
No problem. Ask anytime you've got a question. But we do need to reduce our overall building portfolio, not only for the management side of the building, but just maintaining it. I'd rather have a few buildings that are well-maintained than a whole bunch of them that are not so well.
Right.
And establish an attendance area task force, and that's what's working on right now. We're gonna be going into our review process with that. We're gonna invite folks from the community to sit down and go through the data. And that'll be, just like anybody that served on our facilities task force, we go into it in depth. And we wanna make sure people have a chance to thoroughly study the issue and then make a recommendation.
How often do you do that, John?
We look, I look at the numbers every year and say, is this enough of a change that's needed to go forward? And we looked at it 5 years ago. We had a thorough review. We went about, I don't know, 8 or 10 meetings, whatever the number was. Had about 25, 30 people studied it in the Parkside Library. And at the end of the day, we chose one group, one triangle of about 95, 93 kids. And then a federal requirement came through that took 82 kids out of that building, moved them to 2 other buildings. So we didn't have the need anymore, so we didn't move anything. So the last big one we had was 1998 or 99.
It is the desire of the board, John, that we don't wait 7 or 8 years and then have this massive change. That we can fine tune it, if not year by year, every couple of years, so that we can avoid what we've been through many years before, which was such an upheaval, and that is a massive change. We'd like to fine tune it on a regular basis if we could.
And then we had our processes as far as people speaking at a time, blah, blah, blah. Here are the recommended next steps. Unpair Willards and Pittsville and move towards a pre-K-5 configuration. I think we just talked about using bricks and mortar.
How many children are you gonna move to Pittsville?
134
And then we're gonna come from where?
on the east side of Philip Morris Drive.
On the east side of Philip Morris Drive.
And second step is to finish Bennett Middle School and the James M. Bennett site work. And that's progressing on time. It's under budget, the whole 9 yards. One of the goals is to convert Wycomico Middle into a swing space. And that means that we would eliminate that as far as a normal operating unit. But that means that those kids would be dispersed to the other schools in the system. 134 of them would go to Pittsville, that we just talked about. That does 2 things. Number one, it eliminates about a $700,000 administrative overhead cost for us. Again, principal, vice principal, counselors, folks like that. The teachers, we'd have the same number of teachers, instead they'd be at different places. The other thing we can do is we can save a considerable amount, and I'm talking millions, by using that as a swing school. And that, if we look at just the Pittsville experience, to get that job done, most of it was done during the summer. We were out there working 7 days a week, and most of the workers were working 12-hour days. When you have people working on an overtime situation, you pay a premium. When you can tell them you've got the building for 12 months or whatever the number of days is, they can do it cheaper if they've got more time. So we're interested in being able to save those dollars. We would convert Chipman Elementary School into a Chipman Early Learning Center or a pre-K center, and this would allow us to stop renting some of the space we use, as well as we get more kids in one site, and I believe have an educationally better situation. We would look at limited renovation of Delmar Elementary, build a new Beaver Run, now 6, 7, 8, 6. If we have some luck with the CIP process at the state of Maryland, some of that Delmar Elementary will happen this year. New Beaver Run Elementary, we're talking 5, 10, 15 years down the pipe, because now we're getting into long-term things. Build a new Glen Avenue, repurpose East Salisbury, and these are getting soft. You know, is it better to build a new Glen Avenue, or is it better to adjust the building and add on to it? That's 10 years out, and we're not ready to make that recommendation, other than just saying, this is what the committee said would be a good move.
Wasn't Glen Avenue and West Salisbury built at the same time, or was that another
No,
school?
that's Glen Avenue and West Salisbury, I think. Who's got a?
West Salisbury.
They were both built at the same time.
Yeah.
Same,
East Salisbury was
basic
built
set
about
plan.
30 years earlier.
Yeah.
I like to comment, John, if you go back for a
Got it.
minute, that 2 of those are tied together I believe, and I hope the council understands, when we look at 4 and 5, if West Salisbury School is built to accommodate 650, and you're talking about the size of the school, its recommended elementary school be 550 to 600. We've said 650, and that is a workable size. I've worked in it. It still gives you that closeness as a family, and it's not so large that you lose the atmosphere you want in an elementary school. But if West Salisbury were able to accommodate that number, then Chipman can become an easy transition. Will take some money, but not great amounts, to transition Chipman into an early learning center, which means that we stop paying lease money for the infant and toddlers program, which is now housed somewhere else, and we have that program for early childhood learning spread out. We've got it all in one place, which is a powerful step forward in terms of meeting the needs of early learners. So West Salisbury project and Chipman go hand in hand in terms of what we're able to do to strengthen the program of instruction in the county. I hope you don't miss that. They're not separate because one impacts the other, and we're able to do two important things if we're able to build West Salisbury as a 650 student school.
That's quite, I'm going to go back to number 1, and then I want to go to something else. But the unpairing of Willards and Pittsville, what effect does this moving the 132 students to Pittsville have on Willards?
If, it will have no effect as far as, we've got room in Pittsville to move many of those kids. All of them, I don't know that we can say that, because Kathy's had more contact directly with the numbers.
It won't have, the elementary lines for Willards will stay the same. The middle school line for Pittsville will be expanded, so it won't have any.
You won't be moving any grades to Willards?
No.
Okay, all right, because I know you said, okay. The other thing, assign students to schools on the basis of residence. Does that mean you're going to do away with a special exception of people being able to go to schools out of their districts, or?
I don't think we'll be able to ever get rid of it totally, but I think we want to reduce it. We get some complaints from people who live in the community, live right across the street sometimes, and they've got 28, 29, 30 kids in their classroom. And some of those kids are coming in from another area because of whatever the reason was that was approved by the special permissions. And I think we have a responsibility for the folks that live in the community first. And then the folks, and we serve everybody in the county, but it's not a situation you can just simply choose to go hither and yon.
A lot of people do.
Well, it's 1,000, I think there's 1,000 people on special permissions right now, and I think we need to look at that because it causes some bulges in the system.
But they should only be approved, Joe, if there's space available in the school for that. If third grade is already full and you're requesting special permission to attend that third grade, then it should be denied because you can't continue to make the class large for all the students who should be there. So it said special permission, but it should also say space availability is a key factor.
How much is pre-K infecting enrollment now? Because it's a big push now, right, to try to encourage pre-K. Where are we with pre-K now? And I don't know what we're doing as far as implementing that process or whether it's even being done to a degree.
We have about 300, or how many kids do we have in pre-K right now?
Off the top of my head, about 400 pre-K students, and some of our pre-kindergarten classes are still half-day classes. However, as you very well know, the state is pushing towards all-day, full-day pre-kindergarten.
Right.
And we have been able to currently house several full-day programs for our pre-K. Several, of course, at the Learning Center, which is called Wealth, through the Judy Center. We have 2 full-day programs at West Salisbury and 2 full-day programs at Chipman Elementary School currently.
And aren't you?
The issue there is space, because of course, once we continue to push, that means more capacity will be needed in the schools.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, how much that comes into play with your anticipation of increased capacity.
We see,
I guess, well, yeah, okay, go ahead.
we see that as a growth area for education services in the state of Maryland and across the nation. It's very effective in terms of being able to get kids that were not at standard up to an accessible standard in kindergarten for long-term performance. If they start behind in kindergarten, the likelihood of them ever catching up is really starts to dim. So the state is pushing it. It's a big challenge for us. Number one, these are additional kids.
Right.
Number two, we're getting about $400,000 on a program that costs us $1.5 million.
It's very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, and we believe that those kids should be counted for the amount of times that they're getting served. And so we're trying to inform the legislators to provide that kind of funding. And there's progress, but it's not the kind of progress we'd like to see. We're delighted to serve the kids, but it gives us a facility challenge, it gives us an operational challenge, because for every dollar that we're serving them, that's taking $1 away from the other students in the classroom. So every student in those other classrooms is getting probably, you could roughly estimate $70 less services that year for those dollars to go to be able to subsidize an underfunded program.
And I want you to clearly understand that the only way that we're able to service pre-kindergarten students full day is through grants at the state level. They're not funded through the general operating budget, it's through grants.
And it gets to be really complicated, I think, a process. I mean, they're blurring the lines between education and, more of the social structure as far as, who's taking care of the children. And it's almost as if they're asking the Board of Education to take on that responsibility. You don't have to have a daycare center now. You can go to the Board of Education and that solves the problem. But I hope they recognize what they're asking us to do.
The plus side of that, John, has been, and that started with kindergarten, but the plus side has been, and I was just at a meeting in Annapolis 3 weeks ago, the evidence of the difference it makes in terms of that student's ability to be able to perform at a level expected when they hit grades 1 and 2, if they've had that preschool, kindergarten, pre-kindergarten experience, has been proven where it is in effect across the state.
Yeah,
The scores have shown that.
I had read that they lost that by about 4th and 5th grade. They lost that advantage, but the only true advantage that seemed to go through their lifetime was more the social skills. They did pick up on more social skills, but it wasn't as strong an influence on their true educational abilities.
I've heard the leveling off
It's-
process.
It's all over the board.
I think you can find a study to support either side of it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. A key piece to it is that the vast majority of the kids that are in it are either school dependent, in other words, economics, or they are handicapped. There are some slots available for normal kids, but the majority of the program is already filled up with the others. We like to mix in kids that are non-handicapped, because you've got models there of a different situation. And I think that helps the kids, but the vast majority of the kids that are in the program are behind someplace as far as, either behind the 8 ball economically or handicapped wise.
Well, so you mentioned there was a push by the state to do this, and there's grants for it. Is there a mandate that you do this?
We are mandated to provide services. The level of services varies, but we are mandated to provide services pre-kindergarten.
What was the shortfall, annual shortfall that you?
About $1 million, $1.1 million. It depends 1 year to the next. We are very assertive in regards to going after grants.
Right.
To try and fill in those things, but at the end of the day, it has never paid for itself.
Your attempts at the state level, are they being received well? Is it?
Oh, they like us, but they don't want to give us the money. And their concern is if they count that, if what we want them to do is just count the student as an FTE or a part of an FTE. But if they do that, that is a huge ticket.
That would be huge
Sure.
if they would do that. That would be huge.
Yeah.
Is there any chance of that?
It keeps being discussed year after year after year, but no one has stepped up to
You said
the plate to
FTE?
see that it's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, full-time enrollment, I'm sorry. I'm guilty, I don't even think about those things anymore, I'm sorry, Al. But we want them to count them as kids. And maybe someday they will, but right now it isn't there. And most of the states are grappling with the same issue.
And on that line, too, I know in the report, you had talked about looking for alternative funding and maybe even establishing a committee through the council as alternative funding. So I thought that was interesting. I wasn't quite sure what ideas, whether it was public-private partnerships or what you guys may have had in mind. And
We're open to anything that gets the dollars. We've had a couple of internal conversations with it. We had some conversations about 2 years ago with the county executive and finance people, and they brought in some alternative finance experts and stuff. But every time we looked at it and turned the stone over, it kept making us sense that the current funding system for bonds and the like is at, what, 2% you sold your bonds here recently? Or thereabouts, is the cheapest way you can borrow money.
Wayne says 3.
But almost and every
Still
time
cheap.
we've talked about the alternative financing, in other words, somebody comes in and says, we're gonna loan you X number of dollars for whatever period of time, you're gonna do whatever project, or we'll build a building for you and then you pay us back over a period of time. It starts to look like a closed-end lease, and they want something for you playing with their money. So instead of paying 2 or 3 or whatever that number is, you're gonna pay something more than that, because they have to make a profit margin. At the end of the day, their investors have to get paid. So that's been the result. They've had, I think the state's had one modest, it was an art school up in Hagerstown. The art school is beautiful, pretty small, serves a couple hundred kids. But that's really the only alternative financing project of any magnitude that's gone forward. I'll go back to the list here.
We'll be glad to help you with it as far as, trying to get a committee together.
We'll set up another meeting to talk about that again, please. Thank you. Limited renovation of the non-career and technology education Parkside High School. Look at major renovations and additions to Mardella Middle High School. New Fruitland East on par with Fruitland West. Again, now we're getting, down the pike a ways and the like. Replace Wycomico Middle School, Pinehurst Elementary School. We just know we have to do something about that. That building is in the 30s, and we really need to think about it. And the West Side Intermediate, possibly close West Side Primary School, but we're talking 30 years out. Very few people in this room will be working at that time. Hopefully we'll all be retired. Not everybody, but we're down to a handful. And then
Not these
new additions to.
millennial guys.
Yeah, Northwestern Elementary. And to think about it, we try to rebuild the buildings to last 50 years. And we just did Northwestern Elementary School 2 years ago. And that was on a mixture of dollars from a variety of different places, including donations from the community. So it really turns it into kind of a 50-year plan. So that's what the report was. And this is the presentation I've made at multiple places throughout the county. And I'm delighted if somebody has a group that they'd like a presentation and discussion and they can dive into a particular detail of their neighborhood, I'd be delighted to be there and give it.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming here because it really, the more we share information, the easier it makes. A comment was made when we went to West Salisbury on that Saturday. I was pretty impressed by the fact that I think everybody had all their ducks in a row. Hugh really knew exactly what the ins and outs were of every issue on that school. We're standing there and we were in the gymnasium and talking about the lead in the tiles in the gymnasium, and then we went to one of the classrooms. We were talking about the lead in the tiles again. And who is the gentleman from Gillis-Gilkerson? Dwight, yeah, thanks, Dwight Miller, yeah. I should know it, but anyway, Dwight was standing there and goes, "Oh, no, John, these aren't lead." I said, "Oh, what do you mean they're not?" He goes, "No, these are 12-inch tiles. The 9-inch tiles are lead, the 12-inch tiles aren't lead." And, but just those type of things, I mean, there are little tiny things that there's no way for us to understand as council representatives unless we engage more with the Board of Education. And I think that we should visit the schools. I really think as a council, I think as council members, we should visit the schools formally.
Love for you
Be
to
delighted.
do that.
Yeah,
Love for you to do that.
Yeah, great, to get a
Each of
real
the
idea
schools.
of what we're talking about on this whole process. It makes it Makes a lot more sense when you know that the windows have lead in the caulking. And that, yes, you could renovate, but if you renovate and you have lead in the school, your costs are gonna be astronomical.
You got to abate it.
If you could, yeah, you have to abate it, even if you can make it happen. And there's those subtle differences that we don't get to hear every day, which is
The
important.
fact that at a school level, because of the public use of the school, the requirements for everything are much more stringent than they are for a business person. And a lot of folks don't realize that, in terms of air quality and everything else.
And this is what I've been handing out at the various community meetings, so they can have a boiled-down version of a
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
So if you know somebody that's been through one of those, they say, blah, 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 here's what it is. This is in one page, jams a whole bunch of information there in a kind of, I think, a fairly efficient manner.
Yeah, well, I thought it was important when you're talking about, what I think Joe was touching on too, we just don't want to see, I just want to see the neighborhood, I like to see the neighborhood school element stay where it is, as opposed to, fragmentation of things.
Well, good, that's what our pre-K-5 situations would do, is would help to build those kind of neighborhood situations. Right now, we're balancing, Glen Avenue and Chipman and other schools. We believe it has some educational opportunities. It has some downfalls. One of the challenges is going to be is there will be more feedback for us, because undoubtedly there will be a group of 32, 33 kids going through in second grade, and if it's a smaller grade configurations, and you say, okay, do we leave it as one classroom or do we split it into two classrooms of 16? That's a tough decision.
Right.
And fluctuations at the enrollment at a building level are huge. I mean, it may only be 6 kids, but if there's 30 kids in that second grade, 30 kids in a classroom, pretty doable. 36 kids in a classroom in second grade, not so much. So it's just a different set of battles.
Now, you all are meeting with I'm assuming you're meeting with the Board of Public Works on next week?
Yeah, I think so. That's a long ways away.
I know.
Long drive for a short meeting.
Yeah. Now, and they have, I guess, they have deferred most of the requests that were presented?
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're still advocating. In fact, that's where Brian is right now.
Yeah, because I think with, what we did with the executive as far as delaying West Salisbury, I don't think that's, something that everybody is overly anxious to do. I think they really would like to see the improvements made but there truly is a real concern about the capital funding that's coming down from Annapolis. I think the Board of Public Works reflected that to a certain degree. And I know that they're working with their almost $1 billion deficit right now. And I think in what Bobby had presented before, through whatever conversations there were with Hogan, that they truly recognize that there could be some capital issues.
Well, we're advocating to be able to, at the very, very minimum, at least be allowed to do a no-cost kind of a planning year. We need to stay in the queue.
Right.
Once you're totally out of the queue, you just gotta go through the whole thing again, and that puts it off.
That's my concern, John. If
And-
we do that, then
Right.
we have lost more than we're gonna gain back.
Right, that was a concern of mine too, but the reality of the situation is where we are funding-wise. The fact is, we're being threatened with a reduction, I don't even think it's a threat, we're seeing a reduction in disparity grant.
1.6.
1.6, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're gonna see another 400,000 in income tax reduction
Yeah.
from this plant closing. So there's $2 million right there,
Yes.
We can keep in the planning process. That will be a very important point in saving our place in line. If we lose that, then I think we are really taking steps backwards.
Understood, yeah, but of course, then again, you still even get into the architectural and engineering costs that you have to, if you commit to that, and you can't commit to the full length,
And the trouble with that is, if you go into all that, regulations might change before you end up building the school, and you have to go back and do that again.
Depends on whose regulations you're dealing with. Sometimes they're gonna say, no, when you planned it, that's the regulation you go by, like the
Grandfather
leads.
you in.
The leads thing is the big dog on that thing. Because if you wind up going to the next level, the old level gold is now the new level silver, and they may say, no, you gotta go gold for it. So that's where it gets complicated. But with the county and with the city, they've been really good with working with us in terms of, their code issues.
Well, I had a parent that was concerned about her children going to Pittsville from Salisbury. Where do you live, Melissa? Where do you live?
Salisbury,
Where at?
Jefferson Street.
Well, they say it's gonna just be east of Philip Morris Drive, so you're saved.
That's a good thing to know. Thank you.
Glad to help.
See, not everybody, it wasn't just people wanting, not wanting Pittsville, come to Pittsville, people in Salisbury didn't wanna go to Pittsville either, you know?
You know, no matter what decision, you're gonna meet new people.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions?
I have some that are not related directly to this. How far along are you on your solar investigation?
Other than the contracts, I haven't had any meetings on it lately. That would be a Brian and Bruce thing, and I haven't heard them saying, okay, it's time to do a next step on it.
Are there any problems with it? I'm not aware of that, John.
No.
I mean, is it going forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything I've
Is there a
heard
timeline on
said
it?
it's on schedule and
Do you have a timeline?
I don't recall, I mean, for me, a timeline is when are we gonna have groundbreaking, when are we gonna have, cut the ribbon and say it's working? And I haven't seen date on that at all. Because it's gonna take some time to do the design and configuration and figure out where they're gonna hook up to the grid, and there's a lot of the technical kind of guys that are behind the scenes of it.
I see where your cell towers have generated $36,000 for you, or are going to. Can you put up more cell towers?
We'd be delighted. You name it, we'll go. No, seriously, it's a twofer.
Sure.
We get money out of the deal. Actually, it's a threefer. We get the chance, because part of our contract is we can put up something that we want on that tower. And we use them for microwave backups so that we can have fiber optic and the microwave, because when you have 12,000 kids hitting enter on the test, the thing has to work. And the third thing is our staff at those buildings get better cell service. And so it's really, it's a great deal.
Win
It's
for
safe,
everybody, isn't it?
yeah. It's just a lot of real positives about it.
You only have two now, right?
Just two.
so far.
So far. Good for you.
Somebody else wants to get in there, we'd be delighted.
Okay.
We haven't closed the door if someone else wants to walk.
I'm sorry.
There's another request on the table, it's gonna be
Is
done
there?
to the board in the
Yeah.
next month.
Good. Good for you. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Alternative financing.
Great, we'll do that.
Funding.
And I don't have any new news on the Beaver Run water hookup thing, but my understanding is that the staff are working on that and working out the details, and there's gonna be a little digging going on soon, I hope.
Good.
We want it, and I think other people out there want it too. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
John, said there was no changes at Willards. What does that mean? She said there was gonna be no changes at Willards.
We're done, right?
We're moving on.
John, you all have seen John's letter on the Bennett Middle, progress at this point.
Yes.
The status report on that. I know there've been some questions.
Yeah, we saw it, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, so that's already been done.
Used to go over to Pittsville, now they're staying in Willard.
Okay.
And that fills up the classroom. We're gonna add more students over there, then we gotta do some bricks and mortar. I mean, because the families out there who said they don't wanna have any more portables, and we respect that. They try to avoid
I think
those.
the town's getting ready to pass an ordinance.
To not allow them.
haven't been out there for a
There
while.
might be an ordinance against them, I don't know. They don't allow mobile homes.
Right.
In Willards now. Right. Yeah,
What?
They're getting fancy.
yeah. That's what the guy told me, he said, there might be an ordinance against portables in Willards. I don't know. All right, are we done?
No, we got closed session.
Bennett, Salisbury Middle School, or some will probably go out to Mardella,
Oops.
but it'll be maybe 50
A
or
lot of
60
reading
out
while
there.
you're sitting there waiting for the kids.
The bulk of them will go to Salisbury Middle. Y Middle has, their population is quite a bit down, it's down by 50.
They got a spot.
They spread a $700,000 administrative tab across that small population.
I do, I was really inefficient.
My son.
I mean, how come she
And I
would,
have a daughter.
if it's in the floor, she's
Going
great, just put it up on the desk.
Call me start, it's closed, right there.
Well, and they've got a great staff.
And the WISE program.
Yeah,
Really?
great, thank you.
This adjourns our open session. We will be going into closed session in 5 minutes. Thank you.